Hi man, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. Today is my introduction to my failure of reading in February. I only read 5 books, which is actually still a lot, I guess, but for me it is a very small amount. And I have no excuses. Like I've been busy, yes, but I should not procrastinate on reading like I did this month. And I didn't even finish a lot of the books that I needed to get done this month. So let's go through all the books that I actually successfully read this month, and then let's talk about the books that I need to read next month. And I'm going to be better in March. I'm going to do a lot of reading in March to catch up. So I'm going to be going from the lowest rated to the highest rated. So the lowest book this month, which wasn't even that bad, was The Lighthouse by Christopher Parker. I gave this 2.75 stars, so almost 3 stars, and that's the lowest rating of this month, which is pretty good. So this follows this young woman who is 18, I believe. Her mother just died, and her father, who is a police officer, decides to take her on a vacation to this small town that has this historic lighthouse and this like very cozy feel, and she ends up taking a bunch of sleeping pills and she almost dies, but then she gets woken up by this young man who runs this horse farm, and he's deep in debt because he had to pay for his father's medical bills. So you have them becoming friends, you know, through their grief. His mother died as well when he was very young, so they have this in a lot in common. And then you also have this mystery of the lighthouse, and there are possible ghosts that are going on or something like that. Basically, it is a mystery that deals with grief. It also has like magical realism in it, and I enjoyed this book. However, it wasn't at all what I was expecting. For the first almost 2/3 of the book, at least over halfway through the book, it is basically the most boring book. You just have the two main characters, the girl and the guy, just spending time together and talking, and that's the entire plot. You know, you learn a little bit about the town, you learn a little bit about their backgrounds, but it is ridiculously boring. Then you have the last third, or about the last half almost. That changes everything, and there's a big twist that happens probably like 2/3 through the book, and that changes how you look at all the characters, everything that's happening. And so that's when you are kind of unpiecing the mystery and trying to help fix things. I can't give more away because of spoilers. So for the first like 2/3 of the book, I was pretty bored. I wanted to know what was going on. Something was off in the town, but until that like last third, I was just like, this is not a great book. And that's why I gave it so low a rating, even though that last third was amazing. Yes, it had this little like perfect ending almost, but like it wrapped up too many things in the ending. But it was really interesting commentary on grief and on friendship and love and romance. It was very different than I was expecting, but it was enjoyable. All right, the next one is the only one I was supposed to read this month, but I was actually supposed to read it in March, so I'm all over the place. But that was White Cat by Holly Black. Holly Black wrote The Crow Prince, which I had many feelings about when it first came out, and I wrote on my blog a very long rant review about it. I hated that book with a burning passion. I'm curious to see if I think the same way, because that came out like maybe 4 or so years ago. So I'm curious. I probably would have very different thoughts if I read it now. But this book came out actually prior to it, but I'd never heard of it until it was selected by my book club to read for March. So I read it. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. So I gave it 3 stars exactly. So it was an average book for me. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. So basically it follows this Castle, his name is. He is this young teenager. I think he's 17, who he believes that he murdered his best friend, and he doesn't quite, know what happened, but he's living with that deep guilt. And then you also have some weird stuff going on with his family, who in this world, there are like curse workers. Basically, they have supernatural ability type things. They're like X-Men, basically. Each of them has their own unique ability. For example, one can like manipulate feelings and emotions. You have one that can like twist and work your memory and like make you forget things or remember things. And so you have a whole bunch of different varying individuals. And the world was really fascinating to me, even though this felt like such a short book. Yeah, I just like whizzed through it and I was like, well, where is the rest of the book? Because I didn't feel like we got a deep dive into anything. So it's a very quick fit pace, the plot, and then, you know, you're done and over with. And this is the first book of a series. I don't think I'll probably pick up the rest of the series because I didn't love it. I don't think Holly Black is just for me. She's like, this book was like 10 times as enjoyable as the previous book I read by her, you know, The Cruel Prince. But for the most part, this was just an average book. The characters were fine and interesting. Castle was an interesting character, but like I didn't love them. So I don't know. It was an interesting fantasy book. All right, so the next one I gave 3.75 stars, and that is The Raj at War by Yasmin Khan. Basically, I read this for my India and World War II class. It is a nonfiction introduction to India in World War II. A lot of people don't know the legacy of like India in World War II. A lot of people just don't know how many Indians fought, how the war affected India, because quite a lot of like supplies or production, which were sent to the Allies, were done in India, were manufactured. A lot of the food was gotten, the rice and things like that was gotten from India. But because of that, it absolutely decimated the Indian population, basically. It was horrific. You know, you had this massive famine that came through, especially since they didn't get a lot of the benefits because they weren't technically like a war zone, because they were far away from Europe and far away from Japan. Well, they were closer to Japan, but you know, they were far enough away. So they didn't get any benefits of being like a war-torn country, and yet they were basically a war-torn country. So this was an amazing book. It is pretty dense for like, it's a good introduction to a lot of topics, but it also doesn't dive deep into any of the topics. But it is a good overview if you know nothing about India and World War II. It's an interesting book to like start off with. So the next one is the first one I actually finished this month, and I gave a 4.25 stars. And this is Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH by Robert C. O'Brien. This was the inspiration of The Secret of NIMH, which is a movie from the 80s that I absolutely loved. And I've talked about enough on this channel about that movie, but this was a really interesting book to read. I liked it, and I didn't realize it was like the first of an entire series. There were parts of it that were so similar. Like the first third of the book is the exact same as the movie, but the ending half about completely deviates from the movie. Like, I enjoyed this, but I feel like I still prefer the movie better. There's a much more like clear villain, and with this one, it's gets into the idea of experimenting on rats a lot more. You know, it's not as light and childlike as the movie, which is weird because it is written for children, but it was a great book, and for being like only like 200 pages, it does pack a really powerful message, really powerful plot. You know, you have this woman, Mrs. Frisby, who she just wants to protect her son who is sick and be able to move their house so that they won't get crushed when the plow comes in the spring that the farmer is driving. And so you see her and admire her, and then you understand more about these mice and rats who escape from being experimented on. And yeah, there's just a lot to enjoy in this book, but I still prefer the movie more. And the last one I did a full review on, so I won't be talking about it much in this video, and I gave it 4.25 stars, and that is The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair that Changed America. Basically, it's the story of H.H. Holmes and the World Fair of 1893. 1893, I got it right this time, as opposed to my book review. I did a full book review for this, so I'll link that down in the description if you're curious to hear my full thoughts about it. I really love this book. This was a great book. All right, very short wrap up today, clearly. So I'm just going to go over the books that I need to finish next month. And then we need to pull 2 more out of my jar, which is right back here, which I also need to read next month. So I will be very busy next month. So the 2 that I pulled out of the jar for last month were, the first one was Jingo. I'm currently about halfway done with that, so it's not like I didn't read it at all. I'm not loving this. It's set in the same world as Guards, which I absolutely loved, and I could not put that down, and I was loving it. And maybe I'm just not in the mood for this, but like it just feels kind of boring. Basically, it follows this island that comes out of the sea, and you have these 2 countries that are kind of fighting over it, and we're following the guards in like one of the cities, and it's like hilarious, but also it's just kind of not that interesting so far, so that's probably why I haven't finished it. The next one I pulled out was The History of Religions in Korea by Kim Dak-won. And this one I'm loving too. I am about 75 pages in. So it's about 400 pages. So I did about, a fourth of this, a little bit less than a fourth. But it's not that great. My reading was really bad this month, but it is a fascinating book. In fact, I read a book on Chinese traditions a couple months ago. I reviewed it on my channel, and I just did not like that one that much. And this has everything that I wanted from that one, where it examines different religions and like belief traditions. It starts off with like ancient traditions in Korea, like shamanism and the equivalent to Shinto in Korea. Shinkyo, I think it was called. I don't remember, but really interesting, fascinating to see how religions developed in Korea. The other one that I'm actually listening to on audiobook is Imperial Woman by Pearl S. Buck. And I am about maybe a fourth of the way done with this, and I'm just listening to it like when I'm driving, so I'm not like seriously trying to finish this quickly, but yeah, I do need to finish. I will be finishing that next month. Now we get to the book White Cat by Holly Black. I did have to read for my book club, so I don't have that, so that's something at least. And then the second one I have to read next month for my book club is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley, which I've heard a lot of good things about, so I'm excited to read that one. I always enjoy like mystery thrillers. So let's pull 2 things out of my thing. All right. Oh, okay. Did you find that? All right. So, my Christmas Carol collection has 2 stories that I have not read: The Chimes and the Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens. So yeah, technically this is not a full book because the Christmas Carol is actually the longest of all of these. Yeah, it takes up about the first half of the book. So technically these like 2 short stories, they might be novellas. They might be long enough to be novellas. They're only like 150 pages altogether. Clearly need like easy reads to pull out. So I'm not mad about that. I'm very excited about that actually. All right. Next one. Dorothy Sayers' Lord Peter stories. Oh, where did I put that? Okay, this will actually be really hard because this is a collection of Lord Peter stories, and there's a lot of stories in here. 23 short stories in here. I guess it is. Oh, it's almost 500 pages. Guys, I'm really not looking forward to reading that. I guess I have one easy read, one not. So yeah, I have a lot of books that I have to read in March that I didn't read in February. But do not despair. I do not despair. I will get these done. Okay, I promise. So, how was your reading month in February? Hopefully better than mine. If you like this video, like, subscribe. I post every Saturday and Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and I will see you all in the next video, hopefully less overwhelmed with reading. Have a great week. Bye.